Hello and welcome to the Good Leader podcast. I am Will James.
And I'm Will Vanderhart.
And I'm thrilled to be joined with Will today by Roy Akins, who is a BACP accredited therapist. He is founder of Menscape, and he's also a specialist in domestic abuse care and intervention. So, I mean, that's a lot, and I don't even really know what that means. So I'm really excited to hear a bit more of his story, a bit more of his experience, and we're excited to have you here today, Roy.
Thank you.
Yeah, Roy, I mean, I probably should say that last time we spent a lot of time together, we were working out together, and looking at the size of you, I'm feeling a little bit embarrassed and humiliated today. There were good moments though, weren't they?
Very good, very good. We had a good time.
Yeah, so that was like 15 years ago, Will. Roy kindly invited me into his men's workout group, and I was a very skinny white guy amongst some very handsome and very strong black guys like Roy. But they humoured me and they kept me in the room, and it was real pleasure and delight to spend time with you. Such inspiring. At the time, Roy, you were helping young men who were involved in crime or at risk of crime, and taking them up mountains and working with them in the outward bound. Just say a bit about that. Was that the kind of beginning of your work in that area?
It actually wasn't the beginning,
Right.
But it was a significant journey at that stage. I worked in youth justice for a long time. That was my kind of statutory role.
Okay.
However, I did a lot of community work also, and there were friends and sons of friends that were interested in doing some of the things that I was doing at the time, like going up mountains. Did most of the major mountains in the UK, and they were interested. Right. So I would take, a lot of London kids, across the country, and go up mountains. Fantastic experience for all concerned, and I think really life-changing for some.
And what was, at the time, what was sort of your engine? Because you got this real passion, and that started there. You've now done probably 20 years in this area of work. Not many people sustain work in that area for that long. Obviously something in you has kept that kind of fire alive to see life transformation in people maybe on the fringes of society or people who society have excluded.
Change.
Right.
Yeah, and wanting people to change, knowing that they have the capacity to change whatever situation they're in, and trying to facilitate that change the best I can. I recognise that they were instrumental people in my life growing up, and without them, I wouldn't have been the person that I am today. So I just want to be the same for others. I think that's what inspired me the most. I think, I've seen young people thrive and be successful in families and in their education, but also I've seen those that are falling into difficult situations, into criminality, but also into mental health spaces that have been quite destructive, for themselves and for their families.
Amazing. I mean, inspirational. Last time we reconnected recently at the exhibition of a young guy who was an artist and who was reflecting on his own mental health journey. It was a great moment, wasn't it? It was like, I can't,
Yes.
It was a great exhibition and really powerful, and those pictures were absolutely phenomenal.
That young man was called Oakley Henry. So he's a son of a friend of mine, who went through difficult, challenging times mentally, and his real passion was art.
Yeah.
And during his difficult times, he drew. And fortunately for him, his work has been recognised, and now he's in a different space, a positive space. His artwork has really shined and given inspiration and hope to others.
Amazing.
So Roy, when in your work at the moment, you've obviously got these three different areas, I think at least, that you're engaged with. But what kind of gets you out of bed in the morning? And what do you feel is the sort of difference that you're busy trying to help facilitate in the world?
I'm inspired. I'm inspired by life itself. I recognise we have a short life in year terms, but I want to make the most out of my life and try to inspire others in the best way that I can. So yeah, I am driven, but I think, I believe that the calling I have is instrumental in how I get up in the morning and do the work that I do, and maintain the level of passion.
And when you say calling, like how would you describe that, or is it possible to try and put that into words? What you feel kind of made to do?
I would call it a spiritual calling, and I recognise that at a certain point in my life there was something that called to me, and really kind of shook me and woke me up to the skills, the capacity, the abilities that I have, and that it could make a difference to others.
Roy, you're like, you could do so many things, and that's one of the things about you were a kind of community leader. When I was leading a church in Harrow, you were a kind of community leader with your wife Donna. You had a big influence on the culture of our neighbourhood. You were like really well regarded locally. I know that you could have had a career in politics. But you've stayed on the hard edge. You didn't abandon the people that you first desired to represent, and now you're working with people who have offended through domestic abuse. That society, in my experience, quite like to cut off people like that and cancel them and distance themselves from those kind of people. But you've lent towards them. What's the difference? What stopped you from abandoning the hard edge to try and find something that was, I don't know, more glossy and glamorous?
It's a good question. I think it's just a level of compassion that I have for people, and people who are suffering, people who are struggling with life. I've had my own struggles and my own ups and downs, and with that, it's enabled me to understand, be aware, to align with others, and to know that they can change with the right support, with the right environment. So I just feel like I've been catapulted into a space where my roles, can do a lot more to help, again, facilitate those changes in others.
Wow. Well, we would want to press into some more about domestic violence. What do you think?
I mean, one of the thoughts that strikes me as you're talking is that so across my life, I've spent a lot of time working with people in purpose-driven kind of giving contexts. People really not avoiding the mess and being up for going and engaging with it and trying to help. And so often, sadly, those people have often got burned out, or their own resiliency is worn out. And I'm loving some of the words you're using, and I say why, and you say inspired, which is so positive and hopeful, and again Will says why, and you say compassion, which again is it's so positive and it's so creative. I'm interested, how do you keep resourcing yourself? How do you stay resourced? How do you on that positive in that positive energy?
I think ultimately it's about understanding what your purpose is. I think that's a starting point, and being aware that because of this purpose, the work needs to be done. But for me to be the best person to deliver, I need to look after myself. So it's self-care. So self-care, for me, it looks like prayer, meditation. it looks like going to the gym, working out, looking after myself, having fun, with family and, the young ones within the family, laughter and really being inspired by other people doing great things, young and old, and just keeping a sense of awe and humility. And that's what I think keeps me going. I'm hugely impressed by people doing very unsung things, within society, but in a very deep and very, I would say, spiritual way, having less but doing so much. It really invokes a deep respect and admiration. And I think seeing that, within others, inspires me even more. So it works right now in terms of what I'm doing, but I have to stay conscious of myself and what works for me and what doesn't work for me. So it's work in progress all the time. I can never rest on my laurels and expect things to be okay. It's constant work. And I recognize that in others as well. Constant work in order to move from a difficult space to a more positive space.
Working in an area like domestic violence is, most leaders say, it's pretty traumatizing. I mean, we talk a lot about trauma now. You're a BACP registered therapist. You must, be doing trauma work, no doubt, with people. A lot of leaders who might be listening to this podcast thinking, well, I try and stay away from things that might, create trauma. In me. To what degree do you find you're able to walk away from the kind of things that you're hearing that are harrowing and difficult? And how do you not let them impact your family life with Donna and your own children? Like, in terms of how do you kind of stay clear, I guess?
I think for any therapist, there's pre-work before you go in with a session, into a session, and post-work. Yeah, so that's on self. So before you go into a session, I mean, certain therapists have different rituals. Clearing, and also, being in a calm space. Some will pray, and some meditate, but it's really important to put yourself in a healthy space before the session starts. And similarly, do the same when the session ends, but a lot of clearing, prayer, or doing some kind of activity that enables you to de-stress. Yeah.
So it's like a transition. They almost need a transition between that environment and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really, really important, because therapists do burn out and deal with some heavy, heavy things.
Yeah.
So the things that I do at this moment in time appear to be working.
Right.
So I'll just continue doing those.
I like the way you use the word "appear to be working." This is really kind of like natural, kind of.
Yeah.
I'm staying curious to it.
Yeah. I mean, I like to go to the gym after.
Yeah,
sessions,
sure, okay.
Yeah, and really work out and sweat and, just bring myself, back into my body.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and just detached mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, from the trauma and the energy of that trauma, because everything is energy, yeah? Everything is frequency, everything is vibration.
Yeah.
So it's about, transitioning to a different energy, vibration, frequency.
In terms of, say a bit about friendships, because you got a lot of friends, and you've kept your friendships I met some of your old friends who reintroduced me when we were at the art show. You just kept friendships, and a lot of leaders struggle with that. What's the secret to keeping your friendships and leadership?
Yeah, I don't think there's a secret.
Okay.
I just think it's about just maintaining healthy connections with others. I think friendships change, over time. People change, but ultimately, I think you will hold on to that core group of friends that have remained consistent over time.
Yeah.
yeah, and you pick up new friends as well, and old friends will go as well. But I think, it's just being there, being supportive, being able to be authentic in your relations with people, particularly at a time like this when there are different challenges that people are facing, and to be supportive and to be a listening ear is crucial to maintaining these friendships. So for me, I just try to stay in that space,
Okay.
and hope that others will be the same for me during my challenges and joys also.
Yeah.
You were saying that the sort of routine appears to be working at the moment, and not that I want to sort of dip down into really difficult, challenging times, but I'm wondering, how long do you think that has been, that it's been working? Like, when was the last time that you felt like, I don't think it is working? How did you notice? How did you respond? And I'm curious as to whether Donna would have noticed, and whether she would have said anything and been a part of that process of kind of enhancing your self-awareness, so that you know that you need to create some shift and some change.
I think the best people to notice are your children. I think they notice a shift. They will notice Dad being a bit more grumpy, a bit more detached.
Oh dear.
And not doing as much as you would normally do. And they are great people, to be authentic with you, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And you really feel it. You really feel it. I think children more than anyone. And being a therapist and working with people, I mean, you have to be honest with self, and you have to analyze your own feelings. And in a sense, we've been trained to know when things don't feel right. Fortunately, I have a supervisor as well. Like most therapists, all therapists should have a supervisor that they meet with on a monthly basis. They enable you to stay on track, and they enable you to talk through certain challenges in the therapy work, and to help you make sense of what's going on for you as a result of that. Because a lot of transference and counter-transference working with clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certain things may trigger you, and there's certain things about me that may trigger them. So it's really important to be self-reflective, insightful, and to be self-aware. But at home, the children, but supervising in particular, is great for that overall expertise in knowing how this stuff works and how it impacts on therapists more genuinely.
I mean, I've got to say, it's so helpful speaking to you today, Roy, because, your stature, your presence, your strength physically, a lot of people are thinking, Roy's a tough guy, he doesn't need this. And hearing you talk about self-reflection, sensitivity, like accountability to family, supervision and stuff, I mean, it's just gold, because again, the presumptions that many men suffer from, especially in leadership, is like, I need to be strong, I need to have it all together, I need to I don't want to tell anyone my vulnerabilities or problems. But, in a way you're saying, doesn't matter how strong you are, you got this, this is real for you, right?
Absolutely. In order to be a therapist, you have to go into personal therapy yourself.
Yeah.
And I remember my first therapy session, and it was quite daunting. And I was quite anxious traveling, to my therapist at the time. And I was trying to figure out what was going on for me at that time, because I'm all right. I've worked out a lot of things, theoretically. And I kind of bought the talk about Roy being a strong guy and, being a leader. And helping so many people and being supportive to everybody. And I felt, yes. But in the first session, I was asked how I was. And I said, yeah, absolutely fine. I'm good. And then he looked at me and he said, how are you really, Roy? And I just felt the tears just flowing down my eyes.
Wow.
And it took me by surprise. I was shocked. And I must say, that was the first time in a long time that I cried.
Wow.
And I didn't really know the specific reason why I was crying.
Yeah.
There was no incident, there was no problem I was going through at that particular time. It was just my whole life cried at that moment.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
mhm.
Wow. Well, Roy, I mean, thank you. Like, that kind of vulnerability is so important, isn't it? Will, I mean, how do we help our leaders to connect like that?
Well, the two thoughts it's giving me are one about supervision. And actually, I'm thrilled that supervision as a practice is becoming much more mainstream. So there are all sorts of different professions and people who are starting to draw on supervision as a resource.
Yes.
So, and actually, I think anybody in leadership, I would encourage to think about how might getting some partnership to think about how I'm showing up, what's going on in me internally, because obviously our internal reality dictates what happens externally so much. So just to sort of mention that is available for more people. But I think it's really powerful in that story that I've had a very similar experience of walking into that sort of encounter and consciously being so unaware of my own sort of need or kind of spiritual hunger or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it can take somebody else. I think about it as like we often stay moving around in our comfort zone of thinking, and it takes inviting somebody else into dialogue for them to even feel it. They just take your thinking and your feeling sort of a little bit out of your kind of comfort zone territory, and you suddenly kind of, it's a bit like the ground needing rain, but it doesn't know it needs rain, and it takes somebody else to help you just realize. And I think a real thread of what you're describing that I feel so excited about is this sort of interdependence, this recognition that there's no such thing really as a self-made person. We're all interconnected and dependent on other people, and that a core part of finding our place in the kind of interconnected everything is actually connecting with others and allowing ourselves to be resourced so that we can live into that purpose.
Yes.
So good.
Absolutely.
Roy, as we come to the conclusion of this podcast, just love to hear a bit more about Menscape, the work you're doing, and what your aspirations are. Men are in an interesting space in society. There's sort of old tropes still lingering around men needing to be strong. There's also kind of demands on men needing to be more vulnerable. Lots of men would say, I don't quite know what to do. When I'm strong, I get criticised. When I'm weak, I get criticised. I don't quite know what I should be. Just say a little bit about why you founded that movement and what your hopes are. Obviously, you're specialising in domestic violence, which is such an important area of work. But also more generally, like, what are your aspirations for men in your counselling work?
Menscape was founded in order to provide specialist support for men. Giving all types of men an opportunity to feel nurtured, feel heard, feel supported in a space that is non-judgmental, is confidential, and allows them to talk about their issues, whatever those issues may be. I know certain therapists are not comfortable with working with men. I know that from experience. I also am aware that certain therapists are not comfortable working with men in the criminal justice system or who are perpetrators of domestic abuse. And I identified a real need. Yeah, there was a gap in services, and lots of men talk about some of the struggles and challenges they've had seeking therapy and seeking a therapist that has an understanding or makes them feel safe, not judged. So that's why I founded Menscape. It was easy to kind of have a generic approach to therapy and say, well, come one, come all. But as a man in particular, I felt with my journey that I needed somebody who could identify with that and who could give me all of the resource to be able to speak my truth in a safe way. So that's what that was about, and it kind of fits into the perpetrator work with domestic abusers as well, because what that does, it also gives men an opportunity to speak about what's going on for them in a safe space. My other work is about assessing those that are alleged to be domestic abusers and delivering interventions to reduce the risk of harm, to their victim as well as to the children in the family, but also for them, and creating safety, for them. A lot of men talk about, nobody cares, nobody listens to them. What about my side of the story?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really important that there's a service that allows that to happen. And that's why Menscape, was set up, for all those different elements of the work.
Roy, I mean, that's so inspiring and also so redemptive. And we love the idea, that you're bringing. It's like you're not discarding anyone, no matter what their story is, and creating that loving, compassionate space for everyone to be heard. It's so precious, and it's so unusual in our society. So we will say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for sharing what you're doing with us too today. And I hope everyone who's been engaging with today's podcast has found Roy's story super supportive and helpful. If you're affected by these issues around domestic violence, we just encourage you to seek further support. And if you are someone who wants to relate to Menscape, do check out that special piece of work that Roy is founded. From me, Will van der Hart, this has been the Good Leader podcast.
And I'm Will James. It's been great to be with you. Been great to be with you, Roy.
And we will see you again soon, no doubt, in our next edition. Have a great day.